Right, croeso and welcome to the Education Scrutiny Committee meeting of the 22nd of March 2021. This meeting will be recorded and made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images, audio of those individuals speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. Can I ask Mark Jakes, our scrutiny officer, have there been any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Cuss and Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. And I wonder if you would take a roll call for me, please, Mark.
Yes, will do, Chair. If members could just answer present when I call out their name, that'd be great. Thanks. Councillor Aldworth.
Present.
Councillor Andrews.
Present.
Councillor Bevan. Councillor Collis.
Present.
Councillor David.
Present.
Councillor Farina Childs.
Present.
Councillor Gale.
Present.
Councillor Hardacre. Councillor Havard.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor Miles.
Present.
Councillor Parry.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
With apologies for missing the pre-meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. And Councillor Simmons.
Present, Mark.
And we've got co-opted members as well. Mr. Davis. Mrs. Havard.
I've asked Delwyn Davis. He has given apologies for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mrs. J. Havard. Mrs. Ireland. Mr. James.
Present.
Ms. Millington.
Present.
And Mr. Martin Weston.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and/or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on this agenda, in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution, and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations? Councillor Wyn David has his hand up.
I'd like to declare a personal and prejudicial interest, Chair, on item 7. A relative is a vice president of the rugby club, and he's also a close friend of mine. And my son, Hevin, has written a letter supporting some of the objectors' views, and I declare a personal interest on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor David, thanks for that personal and prejudicial declaration. If you could leave the meeting, and someone from committee services will ring you when we move on to item 8. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is to approve and sign the following minutes of the Education Scrutiny Committee held on the 11th of January 2021. So just checking for accuracy, we have pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Can I have somebody to move that we approve the minutes, please?
I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you. The seconder, is that Derek?
Yeah, second.
Thank you very much. So members are asked to vote on this recommendation by accessing the forms on the ballot, which should appear on your screens. Has that been passed, please, Mark?
Yeah. Yes, it has, Chair, with 2 abstentions.
Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any members joining us by telephone today?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so going on to item 4, consideration of any matter referred to the committee in accordance with the call-in procedure. Do we have any matters called in today, Mark?
No, no matters have been called in, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5, Education Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme. Right, the members are to consider any changes and agree a final work programme prior to the publication. Is everybody satisfied with the forward work programme?
Shall I just introduce the recommendation, Chair, before we go to the vote?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members are asked, as the Chair was saying, to consider the forward work programme alongside the Cabinet work programme as appended to the report and to suggest any changes. If members are happy, I would like to seek approval to publish the Education Scrutiny Committee forward work programme as appended to the report onto the Council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I have somebody to move the recommendation, please? Councillor John Roberts has got his hand up. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Chair. Could someone clarify to me, please, in future meetings, will we be doing anything regarding the new curriculum of Wales in full detail? When will that be planned on, so we know?
Have we got an officer who can say when the preparations would be ready?
Chair, I can step in there if that's of help.
Yes, please.
Naturally, Councillor Roberts, we're happy to bring forward any matters that you as members would like to see before committee. I know there are a range of seminars that have been put together in this space. If you want a specific item on it, then we'd be happy to timetable that in for you as committee time would deem appropriate.
Can I come in, Chair?
Of course you can.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ed. I remember asking when Councillor David was chairperson on education scrutiny, I remember requesting then if we could have something regarding the new curriculum for Wales. I think it's important. It's getting ever so closer. Our schools are preparing and here we are. So it's been a long time and I think we should have something, please. Thank you.
Chair, could I ask if you bring Kerry in at this stage as well? It will have a bit more detail. Thank you.
Certainly. Kerry, if you could come in.
Yeah, yeah, you're quite right. We did have something in the pipeline and then obviously we rescheduled a lot of subjects this year. But EAS are preparing a seminar on this topic, so more than happy. I think if we have a seminar first, this has worked really well for us in the past. If we have a seminar first and then follow that with a report on our progress towards this, would that be helpful?
Can I ask Kerry when the seminar is planned?
It'll be delivered sometime in the summer term. So what I would suggest is that we have it early in the summer term And then we follow that up with a report on our particular progress in Caerphilly, and maybe have, as we've done before, a head teacher presenting on, you know, how it feels to be approaching this in the school, and then can answer practical questions on that. Would that be good?
Can I ask, Councillor John Roberts, are you happy with the timing of that?
I'm aware that things have had to be jigged around an awful lot because of COVID and everything else. I understand all of that, and yes, I am. It's just that, you know, when we're getting ever closer, it's such an important thing, and we are hearing, you know, we are hearing inconsistencies coming through as well. Now, history, for example, the teaching of. So, and I think we should be up and running on it. But thank you so much.
Lovely. Can I bring in Councillor Phil Bevan, please?
Yeah, Kerry, I was just on the original report that went to the Senedd. It referred to head teachers being able to set their own curriculum based on certain criteria, and there was a certain amount of concern that people might it might affect Welsh medium education if a head was particularly anti-Welsh, which could have happened perhaps in Monmouth or Newport area. They could have set the curriculum without the Welsh language in it. So I'm just wondering whether that has been erased or whether it's still in.
I can't comment on that with confidence because I'm not directly involved. What I would say that I could be confident about is that all challenge advisors work with all schools, and I'm sure I would know by now if there were any issues with any of the curriculum that was set. So that's a question you might like to ask when we have the report brought to scrutiny, perhaps, or as part of the seminar.
Yes, okay, thanks.
Okay, so can we ask for, yes, the report to come after the seminar in the summer term, please?
So will you put the forward work programme to the vote then, Chair, with the amendments?
Yes, certainly.
Thank
so
you.
Members are asked to vote on this now, and we will include the report after the seminar. So can you all vote now, please? Councillor Phil Bevan, you still have your hand up. Do you wish to contribute something? Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to item 6, and that's to receive and consider the following Cabinet report for the Teachers' Pay Award 2021. Can I ask the Scrutiny Officer, has the Cabinet report been brought forward for review at this meeting?
No, Chair, that report hasn't been brought forward for today's meeting.
Thank you. So can I hand over to our Cabinet member, please, Ross Whiting. He'll introduce the next item.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update scrutiny on the objections received during the statutory notice period for one of our 21st Century Schools Band B Phase 1 proposals, which is to expand the Trinity Field Special School. The report is scheduled for consideration by Cabinet on the 7th of April. To remind members, this proposal is to expand the existing Trinity Field School and Resource Centre in Ystrad via a new building extension and outdoor play space with an anticipated completion date of September 2023. The proposed new building will provide additional facilities to accommodate growing demand for places and provide additional classrooms, specialist intervention areas and outdoor play space. It's proposed the additional facility will also house a new flexible hall, hydrotherapy pool and soft play facilities to increase the provision on site, which will also be considered for community use at suitable times in keeping with the curriculum timetable. These developments will ensure that the school can cater to the changing and more complex needs of pupils with additional learning needs across the council, both now and in the future, and ensure compliance with the new Additional Learning Needs and Education Tribunal Act. Overall, this proposal will significantly increase the ability of the school to continue to do what it does best, in the best location, and that is to provide an education for our most vulnerable learners for the whole of the county borough. I believe we have a speaker tonight who will help to put the educational benefits of this proposal into context. The proposals went to statutory notice on the 11th of January 2021 and was open for objections until the 7th of February. In total, there were 238 objections, and as an objection period, there were no opportunities for responses in support of the proposals. The key areas of objection were mainly in relation to procedural queries, loss of green space, impact on sport provision, and other planning considerations. Responses to each of the objections can be found in the objection report at Appendix 1, and I believe Andrea will walk us through this when she makes her presentation. I also understand there are speakers tonight who wish to address the committee on their objections, and that others have sent in letters to the committee, which members will have read and considered. These objections will need to be balanced alongside the educational benefits of this proposal. I appreciate that the Education Scrutiny Committee will be considering this proposal and any objections on their educational merits and principles, and that some of the issues raised will be discussed at planning stage. However, I would like to reassure members that we've engaged openly and constructively with the objections raised, including those from Penalta RFC, and the comments they have made in the meetings and ongoing conversations between the club and the council. I'd like to thank everyone involved for their time in helping us to develop these extensive mitigation proposals in the interests of the community as a whole, for the potential loss of a council-owned pitch associated with this proposal. The full mitigation report is attached as Appendix 3, but to summarise, we're proposing significant mitigation by way of improving local sports facilities for use by the club and wider community, with an estimated investment of £300,000. These include the creation of a new senior pitch, upgrade to existing senior rugby pitch, provision of additional changing facilities, lighting enhancements, emergency vehicle access, access path enhancements, and remedial drainage works at Soon Leisure Centre. It will also include the creation of a new mini and junior pitch at Ysramannoch Park. And while the two remaining pitches at Ysramannoch Park are protected already, we will proceed to bring the new pitches at Soon under Fields in Trust status. Members may also be aware of the different sewage and drainage issues near to the Soon Leisure Centre. We're doing and will continue to do everything in our power to resolve this issue in the time between now and any potential commencement of works, in conjunction with Welsh Water, who are responsible for the sewage network, and other partners such as Public Health Wales, to ensure that the pitch and the surrounding area remain safe to use by the public and any users of the pitch. A briefing on this matter is attached at Appendix 4, and I draw members' attention to the note I sent out to all members on Friday last week, which indicates the progress that has already been made to identify the problem. I look forward to hearing the views of the committee on this exciting, ambitious, and above all much needed proposal, and officers are here to answer any detailed questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ross. Right, this evening we have 3 requests from interested parties. I welcome them respectively and ask that they keep their microphones muted when they're not addressing the committee. They will each have a maximum of 5 minutes to address the members and won't be called to speak after this period. Mr. Mark Jiggs will be in charge of the timing, and we'll give you a little warning.
Chair, I did have my hand up to ask a question, please.
Can I say, Martin, Councillor Martin James, we're taking questions afterwards, and we have a question from the pre-scrutiny meeting before yours. If we could have.
So I can't ask a question on the statement you just made.
You certainly can afterwards, Martin. You certainly can ask your question, but if you could just allow Mr. Scott Lowe to talk first, that would be nice. And then secondly, we were going to have Natalie Sargent and then Miss Hurst. So if I could ask for Mr. Scott Lowe to speak first, please.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me the opportunity to address the meeting. My name is Scott Lowe, and I'm the Treasurer at Penalta Rugby Club. I also have 2 children in the club's mini and junior section whose teams I coach, and I'm one of hundreds of volunteers who support over 300 local children in our community. Having been involved in talks with officers during this process, I need to flag the grave concerns that our rugby club has regarding the impact of this proposal on the community. Expanding at the existing site will see the loss of the Trinity 1 playing field. Previous information shared with members has suggested that our rugby club barely use this field. I can assure you that this is our club's main pitch. Across the 14 teams in our club, we play approximately 100 home games a season. Roughly 50 of those will be on Trinity 1, as well as several mini and junior festivals, numerous training sessions throughout the year. The reason that this pitch is used so much is due to the lack of other options. The other pitch at the site, known as Trinity 2, is regularly flooded and unusable. It's also a common misconception that we have some sort of priority usage on the nearby centre of sporting excellence. This is completely false. The expense and restrictions around usage at the centre mean that of the 14 teams in our club, the first team are the only side that are able to regularly access that facility, playing only 10 to 15 games a season there. None of our mini and junior sides use the facility. In terms of the mitigation that is being suggested, when a sports pitch such as this is lost, the council have an obligation under Welsh Government and its own planning policies to provide a like-for-like replacement. This replacement is being proposed at the Soon site. We have several underlying concerns with the proposed replacement that I mentioned in detail in my letter to the members of this committee. But most worrying at this point is the sewerage issue that has emerged. There are 2 manholes next to the proposed pitch that connect to Ystrad main foul trunk sewer. Over the last 3 months, there have been 4 reported instances of these manholes blowing and surcharging thousands of gallons of raw sewage onto the surrounding area and the site of the proposed pitch. No doubt you would have seen the shocking images I shared in my letter. Welsh Water are currently investigating the cause of this issue. At this point, it needs to be stressed heavily that they have drawn no conclusions and extensive work is still required to understand the issue. This sewerage problem is very much live, ongoing, and unresolved. The authority's solution appears to be a small earth bund raised around the manholes to attempt to stop debris getting onto the pitch. We have raised concerns around how safe this is. For example, can contaminated water seep through the soil? What if a ball is kicked off the pitch? What if children or pets venture into the area? These concerns have not been answered. Contemplating putting a sports pitch next to such trunk sewer manholes is simply not acceptable. Irrespective of the ongoing Welsh Water investigation, there can never be a guarantee that these manholes will not discharge in the future. I respectfully ask all those listening, would you allow your children or your grandchildren to play there? As a father and a coach, after seeing the used sanitary products, condoms, etc. strewn all over the ground in recent weeks, I know I won't be letting my children or anyone else's anywhere near there. We have already received messages from coaches and parents at other clubs confirming that they will not be playing there either. I can't say I blame them. There are other underlying concerns. Even with investment, there will be limited changing rooms at the Soon site, and with football currently operating there and the return of hockey, if the existing changing rooms are booked, the expectation is that our players will need to change at our clubhouse and then travel to Soon. The mitigation document states that the distance is only 0.5 miles. However, rather unhelpfully, this is literally a straight line drawn as the crow flies through trees, buildings, and a river. The reality is that the children will be expected to take a 16-minute walk alongside and across busy roads to the town centre in their rugby kit. Again, a simply unacceptable proposal. In terms of reality, as this mitigation proposal stands, we face into the prospect of only being left with access to 2 pitches. The existing Trinity 2 pitch that is prone to flooding, and the existing pitch at Soon, which is barely usable and has poor facilities. As one of the largest rugby clubs in Wales with close to 450 players, it'll be very difficult to see how we can survive in this state. We have a very real fear that this will be the beginning of the end for rugby in this community. Incredibly, this proposal is being positioned as producing a net gain in recreational provision. As you can see, there is only loss here. We fully understand the need for the increasing SEN provision in the borough and the benefits that will be delivered. But surely those benefits should not come at any cost. If this solution, which sees children being asked to play next to sewerage manholes and walk in rugby kit alongside roads, if this is our solution, then we have failed. The decision you make here must be made with equality in mind and confidence that no group is being negatively impacted. The very real concerns I've raised here are the harsh realities that the children of this community and its future generations will face into should this proposal go ahead. Once the space is gone, it is gone forever. There must be a better way forward, a compromise that sees the additional provision provided at an alternative site within the borough, ideally on a previously developed brownfield site. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lowe. If I could hand over now to Natalie Sargent.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the majority of the people on this call will not live or may even be familiar with the park in Ystrad Mynach. It is difficult to convey how important this community asset is on paper. So I welcome this opportunity to speak on behalf of Save Ystrad Mynach Green Space Group and over 2,000 people who have signed our petition so far. Much like a traditional village green, Ystrad Mynach Park is at the heart of our community. Trinity Field has always been used as an open green space, not just for sport, but for bringing the community together for village events since it formed part of the Lindsay Thomas estate. It is part of our heritage. Indeed, the majority of the park are welfare grounds funded by the miners themselves, who had the foresight to recognise the importance of safeguarding recreational facilities and green spaces in perpetuity. Something which decades on we are now only putting into law with Future Generations Act and Planning Policy Wales. The new Planning Policy Wales edition focuses on people's sense of place and the importance of green spaces. It was stated within the objection report that there would not be an impact on other users of the park. We fail to see how this will be the case. Aesthetically, it will have completely changed. The open green space will no longer be visible to the community, which could increase the likelihood of antisocial behaviour and impacting on people's sense of security and safety. The protected park area, which will remain behind the development, will also have changed. If the mitigation proposals are agreed, this will see permanent structures such as barriers and floodlights installed and an enclosed bund on the rear field, which is well used by the community and will no longer be a fully accessible open space. Welsh Government policy specifies that planning authorities should protect playing fields from development. I would like to read an extract from a recent letter from Welsh Government which a resident received when querying their views on this development. It is Welsh Government policy that planning authorities should protect playing fields and open spaces which have significant amenity or recreational value to local communities from development. In planning for the future development of their area in local development plans, technical guidance advises local planning authorities to carry out a comprehensive assessment of local needs and opportunities for green space and recreational activities. This should then be used to inform site-specific allocations in plans, which could also include the need to provide new open spaces as part of a development. We would expect local authorities to take these policy considerations into account in both their strategic plan making for their area and in the process of taking individual decisions on planning applications. In Caerphilly, we have an open space assessment which informed the current LDP. This placed Ystrad Mynach as the worst area in the northern corridor for access to green space, within 400 metres of their home. It was just 26% of residents. Second worst in the whole of the borough, and we had a playing field deficit. It should be noted that this was before the development of Ysbyty Ystrad Fawr took place, leading to the loss of a further 3 recreational fields and green space, which has never been replaced. Our population has also increased by 25% since this time. Central Ystrad Mynach is the worst for physical environment in the borough according to the recent WIMD, and Lower Ystrad Mynach is much better, ranking just 17 out of 110. We are fortunate to also have a comprehensive green infrastructure assessment, which identifies the area proposed for development as having high local and regional strategic value. Within the various policy frameworks, brownfield sites should be favoured over greenfield sites for development, and we do not feel that the options to develop on a brownfield site have been thoroughly and robustly explored. It was stated within the objection report that identifying viable land in the authority and costs associated with purchasing this was one of the reasons a brownfield site was not considered. However, there is already brownfield land within the education estate, which was earmarked for development for the build of the new children's centre, which now appears not to be proceeding, and facilities such as the hydrotherapy pool are now being proposed to be included within the school extension instead. It is also stated in the objection report that a new school development is unlikely to be approved by Welsh Government 21st Century Panel, as it wouldn't meet their aims and objectives, yet 21st Century funding looks to deliver a combination of new builds, refurbs, extensions and amalgamations. In Bracla, Bridgend, the Welsh school was at capacity and they wanted to extend onto an adjacent greenfield site. However, the Cabinet accepted their area was overdeveloped and the green space was valued by the community. and assisted by Welsh Government, they were able to locate the funding for a whole school build on a brownfield site. Could Welsh Government help here, as it is a very similar situation? Green spaces are important for our health, well-being, sport, recreation, flood management, biodiversity, heritage, tourism, education purposes, and climate change adaptation. As an environmental campaigner and a resident of the borough, I am really pleased that the authority has declared a climate emergency and adopted the appropriate policies to try and tackle climate change. We are one of the worst performing areas in the borough, and pollution levels in central Ystrad already exceed WHO standards. We need to do what we can to try and turn the curve and protect our environment for future generations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms Sargent. Finally, we're joined by Amanda Hurst, who's Vice Chair of Governors of Trinity Fields. If I could hand over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. 5 years ago, I was elected as a parent governor at Trinity Fields, and I'm currently the Vice Chair of Governors. And I've been asked to speak from a parent and carer's perspective about why it is so important for the proposed extension to the school to be located at the current site. Firstly, I need to acknowledge, as I think all members already know, what a truly outstanding school Trinity Fields has become. They've been awarded numerous awards over the last few years, but one I wanted to highlight in the context of this meeting is that they hold the Eco Schools Green Flag and are on target to be awarded the highest platinum level flag later this year, and we're very proud of them. The numbers of children at the school have increased year on year, both at the main school site and at the satellite classes across the borough. The school has become a victim of its own success. 98% of the children on roll live within Caerphilly, so it is a truly local school serving the most vulnerable children within our area. Local parents and carers are constantly seeking places for their children with additional learning needs at Trinity Fields as the reputation of the school continues to grow. Up to now, the school has managed this by opening more provision at satellite classes based within mainstream schools, so that currently 40 of the 183 children on roll are educated in a satellite class, and this expansion is likely to continue. 2 new classrooms have been added and a 3rd classroom has been erected where our much loved sensory garden was situated, but we've now run out of space for any more building work on the current site to accommodate the growing numbers of children who need our facilities now and in the future. The proposed extension, co-located with the current building, will save additional year-on-year costs of staffing, administrative staff, leadership staff, premises staff, as well as home-to-school transport, compared with building additional provision elsewhere. One of the reasons that Trinity Fields is so successful is that we put children at the heart of everything that we do. The children were consulted on the plans, and one of their first thoughts was for the boys, as they call them, from the rugby club, and where they'd be able to play their games. They were reassured by staff they'd be able to rent a different pitch close by. The children were unanimous in their views of wanting to stay on the current site. Our children with additional learning needs have great difficulties with transitions and even the smallest changes to their lives. For instance, for some of our children, simply getting out of the school bus and into class can take over an hour due to their anxieties. Imagine how long it would take a child to have to start all over again halfway through their schooling in a different building away from the safe and secure environment they've always known. It would cause unnecessary stress and disruption to their emotional well-being, and their learning would suffer. They and their family would lose their sense of belonging and familiarity which they have to Trinity Fields, which is so important to keep children emotionally regulated. If the extension to the school is approved, there'd be a sort of one-stop shop type of facility where input provided by health, children's services and school staff would all be under the same roof. This would have real benefits for our families as they need to attend many appointments with their children. Their child would not lose learning time, nor would they have anxieties about visiting a different place, as they'd simply go down the corridor to get to their appointment within the school building. I have many memories of trying to get my child out of the car to go to a health appointment and being assaulted, or having the child lie down in the car park and refuse to move, simply because they're so anxious about going into the appointment in an unfamiliar building. And once inside, they often refuse to leave, and then you have the same difficulties in reverse to get your child to leave the appointment. The proposed extension to Trinity Fields will also provide parents and the local community with access in the evenings, at every weekend and in the school holidays, to the new hall, the hydrotherapy pool, the soft play facilities, and as now, the school facilities will be open 6 days a week and for 51 weeks of the year. This will be hugely beneficial to many children and families across the borough, not just those from Trinity Fields, who will benefit from using these facilities for leisure activities and especially the hydrotherapy pool. Our children need the provision of a very warm pool and hoisting facilities directly into the pool, which are simply not available in local leisure centres. One of my children's physical needs in her school could only be met by using the hydrotherapy pool every week, as she was so resistant to moving her limbs on dry land. Once in the water, she completely relaxed and was able to move her arms and legs extensively. With the increasing numbers of children with complex needs at Trinity Fields, some of the pupils are now only able to access the hydrotherapy pool once a fortnight due to the pressure of numbers. 80% of the current children on roll would benefit from this provision. So there is a clear need for a second pool to allow current and future pupils and others across the borough to access this facility. To sum up, Trinity Fields desperately needs the proposed extension to their current building in order to meet the needs of Caerphilly's current and future vulnerable children with additional and complex learning needs. Pupils and governors are unanimous in supporting the proposed extension on the Trinity Fields site. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Hurst. And before we hear from any officers, does anyone need any further clarification from either Mr Lowe, Ms Sargent or Ms Hurst? Well, I thank you for your contributions then. We'll move on and if I can ask Andrea West to introduce
Yes, certainly. Thank you, members. Can I ask Lisa to bring the presentation up, please? Okay, as we have been made aware this evening, we're here to actually look at the objection report and the supporting documentation in relation to Trinity Fields School and Resource Centre. Next slide, please. Sorry, there is a delay, it's a bit slow picking up.
I could swear blind I'm in charge of this, trying to get this to work. Oh, there you
go. We've actually lost it now. Sorry, it'll come back up now. Okay, we're actually proposing to expand the existing Trinity Fields School and Resource Centre via a new building extension, outdoor play, with an anticipated completion date of September 2023. We're proposing to build additional facilities to accommodate the growing demand for places and provide additional classrooms, specialist intervention and outdoor play space. It is proposed that the additional facility will also house a flexible hall, hydrotherapy pool, soft play facilities to increase provision on site, which will be considered for community use at suitable times in keeping with the curriculum timetable. Next slide, please. I'd like to remind members in relation to where we're at this evening. We are actually following guidance contained in the Welsh Government's School Standard and Organisation Wales Act 2013, and it requires ministers to actually issue a school organisation code. And it's basically become the Bible in relation to any proposals that we have going forward. So just to remind members, there's a copy of the documentation that we're following this evening, and it's the Welsh Government School Organisation Code 2018. In relation to what we're actually taking forward at the moment in relation to Trinity Fields, it falls under section 44, which is a regulated alteration in relation to a special school. Obviously, as members are aware from previous presentations that they've received, this actually sets out the policy context, general principles and all factors that we have to take into consideration when looking at this reconfiguration. I would remind members, as some people have alluded to this evening, in relation to statutory planning processes, We aren't looking at that this evening. We're actually looking at a separate statutory process in relation to planning, which will be led by our Property Services Department. So where there's been reference made this evening in relation to any planning aspects, I'll remind members that it is a separate issue and we're not giving consideration to it this evening. In relation to the consultation process, I just wanted to sort of update members here on the process that we've had to follow. This process is actually stipulated in the statutory guidance that I just showed members. It's Welsh Government legislation and we are required to follow quite a prescribed process. We're at number 11 this evening, and it's submit an objection report to Cabinet for approval and final determination to implement the proposal. If on the 7th of April, Cabinet find in favour of the proposal and give it the go-ahead to proceed, we will then publish decision notice and advise all consultees in relation to the publication. And then we will submit a full business case to Welsh Government for approval to implement the proposal. And again, I can't emphasise enough, as I mentioned in the last slide, there is a pre-planning process that will run in parallel and also a full planning consent. I just wanted to remind members in relation to the internal decision-making process to date. As members are aware, on the 14th of September, we published a consultation document. That consultation document ran between the 14th of September and the 26th of October 2020. On the 22nd of September 2020, yourselves as the Education Scrutiny Committee were actually consulted on that proposal. At that stage, we had 12 members support the proposal, 1 member was against, and none actually abstained. So basically, I just wanted to remind members, on the 22nd of October, you were consulted in relation to the proposal. On the 19th of November, we actually then published the consultation report. And on the 26th of November, we actually came back to you as members to actually ask you to endorse the recommendation to proceed to statutory notice. Again, that evening, we had a decision 13 for, none against, and 2 abstained. On the 9th of December 2020, the proposal went to Cabinet and it was supported unanimously. We asked Cabinet to progress the project to statutory notice in line with the requirements of the Welsh Government School Organisation Code. That statutory notice actually ran then between the 11th of January 2021 and the 7th of February. We then compiled the report and it was published on the 16th of March last week, showing what we'd actually received in relation to the objections. And then tonight we'll actually hear to ask members to endorse that proposal to actually proceed to Cabinet for a final decision. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the statutory notice was published on the 11th of January 2020 and marked the beginning of a formal objection period, which ended on the 7th of February. The consultees that were actually engaged with as part of the process are actually prescribed within the School Organisation Code, but also any people who actually mentioned or expressed concerns as part of the consultation process during the 14th of September and the 26th of October were also notified via email or letter, whichever format they'd actually sent their objection in or their views into, of the publication to the statutory notice. We then gave everybody the option to consider the statutory process, and they had an option to either write into us, email, or whichever format they actually preferred. I think it's really important here to actually stress to members that the Welsh Government actually indicate that it's a objection report. And I think it's really important here, as opposed to the consultation exercise, where officers, members of the public and all the stakeholders were given the opportunity to provide support in relation to the proposal. This wasn't allowed as part of this exercise. So I think it's really important to stress here to members that's the reason why that didn't actually take place. Next slide, please. Okay, So the School Organisation Code 2018 under section 49 of the 2013 Act says when objections are received by the proposer, they must publish a summary. And I need to emphasise here, it is only a summary that we're required to actually publicise in relation to the statutory objections and the proposed response to these objections. So in the actual report, we are only required to actually produce a summary of the objections. The report has actually been pulled together, and as I mentioned, it was published on the 16th of March and it's been posted on the authority's website. Hard copies are available on request and they're available in both languages. The consultee listed in 5.1 of the School Organisation Code, and again those who submitted an objection have been advised of this report via email or letter. We've also undertaken quite a comprehensive integrated impact assessment, which is an update of the existing Equalities Impact Assessment to take into account further information that has come forward through the consultation process, and to also comply with the new eco-economic duty, which is set out in Section 1 of the Equalities Act 2010. This actually comes into force on the 31st of March this year, but because the actual consultation period overlaps that with the final report going to Cabinet on the 7th of April, we felt it was relevant to undertake this to ensure that we comply with all new relevant legislation. Next slide, please. Okay, so what's actually happened and what we've actually put in the actual objection report. We actually received 238 statutory objections. I think it's important to recognise here, and I've put it in for members to actually see, that during the consultation period, and it's actually shown within our consultation report, we actually received 1,048 views. And as I said earlier, Welsh Government only allow us to actually take note of any objections. They don't allow us to take note of any areas of support moving forward. During the consultation period, we actually received 447 positive comments and 582 negatives. And then there was 19 neutral responses received. I think it's very interesting to note here that we actually received 582 negative comments during the consultation period. But during the objection period, that's less than half. We've only actually received 238 statutory objections. These objections will be made available in full to all Cabinet members. So when Cabinet actually make their final decision on the 9th of December, they will be provided with copies of all the responses that were received as part of the objection period. So even though we aren't able to give them in full, it's a requirement to summarise them within the report. The Cabinet, just to reassure members, Cabinet will actually receive a full copy, so they will have all the objections received for them. We've broken them down into 5 different areas. As again, in 5.1 of the School Organisation Code, there are 5 areas that we're actually covering. I think Councillor Whiting actually referred to this earlier in his presentation. So the 5 areas are statutory processes, optional appraisal process, loss of green space for the Ystrad community, impact on sporting provision and mitigation options, and other planning considerations. Next slide, please. Okay, in relation to the statutory processes, we've actually summarised the areas that required clarification. What we've actually done here is where the text is shown in green, it denotes where the objection theme had previously been addressed, i.e. through scrutiny or Cabinet meetings previously. So what we've actually done here, we've actually pulled out where the people who actually object actually had clarification in relation to those matters as part of the consultation report. So I'm not going to go through these individually, but for members, for ease of reference, we've actually said where they are within the members' pack and where they are actually contained within the objection report. So as you can see, there are a number of areas that were raised as part of the objection process, which had previously been clarified, and there are a number of others which are relatively new, such as the Ombudsman, and I understand the Ombudsman has indicated that they're not intervening at this stage, in relation to social media engagement, showing where we have actually shown how we engaged through our Facebook page, etc., and obviously given an explanation as how we can't control any external social media sites. Can I have the next slide, please? Again, then, in relation to the option appraisal process, I think it's interesting for members to see here that all the issues that were raised, such as why an expansion and not a purpose-built school on another site, have all options been fully explored, etc. I think it's interesting for members to actually see here that we have previously addressed them, and these have been raised and discussed in some detail in previous scrutiny and cabinet meetings. But again, for ease of reference, we've actually made members aware where they are within the individual packs and also where they are within the consultation report. Next slide, please. Again, in relation to loss of green space for the Estromana community. Again, you will see that all the issues that were raised as part of the objection process have been addressed with members previously and have been discussed at length in previous meetings. The only one that wasn't, as you can see in black, is in relation to contradiction with other policies and CCB strategies. But I feel we've highlighted those not only within the objection report, but also with the integrated impact assessment, which I think everybody can see is a very comprehensive document which has addressed most of the issues that are actually being raised. Next slide, please. The next one then is the impact on sporting provision and mitigation options. Again, apart from 3 areas, all the objections received had been previously clarified. The only ones that haven't were in relation to inadequate mitigation in relation to T1, 3 and Soon Oaks, public health concerns in relation to Soon Oaks linked to sewage, cost of mitigation being put in place into developing schools elsewhere. In relation to the sewage and the mitigation, we have also attached appendices to the objection reports. There's Appendix 3 and Appendix 4. So if you members want to make reference to that, again, for ease of reference, we've actually made you aware of where they are. So obviously, if there's any questions in relation to that, for ease of reference, that's where members can actually find them. Next slide, please. Other planning considerations. Again, apart from the additional hydrotherapy pool, which will have an effect on drainage and increased running costs, and in relation to the planning consultant Turley's document, all the issues raised had been addressed. In relation to the hydrotherapy pool, I think the Vice Chair, Amanda, actually outlined to members the invaluable sort of service it's actually providing to the school in relation to meeting the curriculum needs of the pupils moving forward. And also in relation to the planning consultant Turley's, we actually allowed Turley's to actually present to members in the last meeting that we had, and they actually made representation to their documentation. So I want members to be aware that we haven't ignored that. We aren't required to publish that within the document itself, but we did allow the representative, as I mentioned, from Turley's to make adequate representation to members. Again, for ease of reference, you can actually see where they're referenced within each individual pack and the report. And the next slide, please. The next steps. Okay, Education Scrutiny Committee, as members, you're aware you're meeting tonight, and we're asking you to endorse the recommendations made within the objection report prior to consideration by Cabinet on the 7th of April. To endorse the proposed mitigation and the proposal to fund the estimated cost of 300k from the 2021 miscellaneous finance revenue contribution to capital outlay budget. And then Cabinet on the 7th of April, Cabinet members will be asked to make the final determination in respect to the Trinity Fields School and Resource Centre proposal. Following the decision, or whatever the decision is on the 7th of April from Cabinet, a decision letter will then be published electronically on the Council's website. Consultees outlined in section 5.6 of the School Organisation Code will also be advised of the publication. And that's our presentation for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. We've had 2 requests for questions. The first one from Councillor Brenda Miles, please.
Thank you. I've got a few specific questions that I wanted to just get clarification on to begin with. First of all, can you tell us, you've got the 5 different areas that you've broken down the objections into. Can you say how the 238 objections fit into those 5 different categories? Just for me to get a feel for the strength of feeling. How many objections were we getting under each heading? Do you know what I mean? I think you're on mute, Andrea.
Sorry, I couldn't get it to go off mute then. I haven't actually got that to hand at the moment, but I can actually get it for you if that's what you require. But it wouldn't be obviously available at this time, but we can break it down and let members have it.
Yeah, the 2 areas I'm particularly interested in is to know how many objections we had under the open space heading and how many under the loss of sporting facilities heading. So that was my one question. The other one I wanted to ask then is, can you tell me if the T1 pitch and the T2 pitch are the same size? Are they equivalent provisions or not?
When you actually look at that, do you want me to ask Jared Lockyer to actually come in and look at that and respond to that, please?
Yes, yeah, if you could answer that question, yeah. I had another question about the pitches, which I might as well ask as well. I think you mentioned that T2 and T3 pitches are already protected to some extent. Now, is T1 pitch also protected at all at the moment? That was my other question.
Okay, so we asked Jared to come in to answer the first question in relation to the sizes, and then perhaps we'll ask Rhian Kite then, who's our planning officer, to come in relation to the other aspect.
Yeah, please, if you would, Jared, that'd be great.
Yeah, good evening all of you members. Just in relation to your question on the pitch size, when obviously the sizes were being put together, there was consultation with the club to obviously ensure what they wanted. When you might have seen original diagrams for the Soon-Oak proposal, there was also looking at other sporting provision on the site, but the club wanted to do away with that and have a barrier up the 2 pitches, Soon-Oak 1 and 2. So obviously to do that, we made the Soon-Oak 1 pitch slightly smaller just to fit in everything within the pitch. So originally we were making it exactly the same size, but I believe it's just a few meters shorter. But that doesn't affect Welsh Rugby Union regulations, or it doesn't not meet any requirements for size of a pitch. Hope that answers that, Councillor.
No, because it wasn't the Soon-Oak pitch that I was interested in. I was interested in the relative sizes of the T1 pitch and the T2 pitch. The reason I'm asking is because T2 has been said that it's pretty much unusable at the moment due to the drainage problems there. So what I'm really getting at is if the drainage problems were capable of being fixed on T2, does that provide an equivalent provision to T1 in terms of the size and who can play on it and that kind of thing?
Just coming back in there, Councillor, obviously that T2 that you made reference to is a smaller dimension, and there were discussions with the club around if this was proposed, do we try and make that a bit larger. But obviously, in relation to the mitigation, as you're aware, it's the Sue Noak pitch is the proposed mitigation pitch over at that site. So in relation to your question, it is smaller, Trinity 2, but obviously the mitigation in relation to any loss of Trinity 1 is the additional pitch at Sue Noak. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
That's it. I got it now. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Okay. We have Rhiannon Kite wanting to come in.
Yes, good evening, members. Thank you very much for the question. Just to clarify, Councillor Miles, in terms of the local development plan protection policies, T2 and T3 fall within the leisure allocation for the park. T1 lies outside of the leisure allocation, but all sports pitches are protected in any event in principle by our county-wide policy 8 in the local development plan. So there would have to be sufficient mitigation to justify its loss if it's not surplus to requirement, and clearly this is not surplus to requirement, so we have to be satisfied the mitigation is satisfactory.
I mean, for me, this is the crux of the matter, is that whether the mitigations that are being proposed are sufficient so that the people affected by them don't feel that they're being left in a worse position. I've got to say, as things stand at the moment, I'm inclined to think that because we're still getting objections in significant numbers, that the mitigations put forward are not fulfilling the needs of the local community and the local sporting organisations. So where I'm at the moment is, while I fully support and would like to see Trinity Fields expanded, that can only, to my mind, that should only take place and go forward if this authority can protect the environment and protect the sporting facilities by providing suitable alternatives. I'm not convinced at the moment the Sue Noak's site is providing those opportunities. One, because the plan to create a sporting hub there does not form part of the mitigation. So I think that's uncertain as to whether that can happen or not, or will happen in the future. And also I'm concerned about T3, which is designated to be a sporting field, and yet is also going to be an attenuation area for stormwater, and therefore it's anticipated it will become unusable on the occasions when it'll be flooded, and it could be unusable for a number of days. So I can't really see that T3 is compensating for the loss of T1 to any degree if it's an attenuation pond. So anyway, thanks for the time to air my views.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Can I ask for Councillor Martin James, please?
Michael. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the time. I don't know. I've got a few questions, I'd like to ask. First of all, is to pick up the cabinet member. That's why I wanted to come in with. The cabinet member mentioned at the beginning about the extension to Trinity. Can I say that everybody within Ystrad and the area is in support of the best for Trinity Fields, and we do support Mr. Elliott, but it's the loss of our fields and the area it's in. So, and he never mentioned that, but what I'd like to say he never mentioned, and it hasn't been mentioned also this, is that the children's centre, which they are planning to put on Trinity Fields. Now, there's been no mention in this by Andrea West or anybody else that a part of this site would be taken up by a children's centre, which is in health and social well-being. It's a health board issue, right? Now, I've got to ask the question, why is it not being mentioned, given that we were going to build, and I'm all for it, we were going to build a brand new one of these in Pontefraith, but I have to look at what's being offered and have to look at the size and why it's being put there. Is it being put there for the 8 8 extra classrooms. Because if you look at the plan itself, it's got 145 car parking spaces on that site. Extra. So I got to ask, really, what's going there? How much is going there for 80 children? You know, and this is at a cost of £1.7 million more than another school. Coming back to the plan, well, it's a planning issue or a consultation issue. Part of our constitution states, excuse me a minute, our constitution states loss of any recreation facilities should be consulted on. And I'm glad they've consulted with the children of Trinity Field. But what the authority have not done, they have not consulted with any of our school children in our area. They've not consulted with the college. They've not consulted with the park users. They've not consulted with the Boys and Girls Club, and they've not consulted with the Air Cadets and the Scouts. Now, all these people who under our constitution should have been consulted, haven't been. They've been ignored. Now, all our children are important, but why haven't they consulted? And it was quite easy. They could have written to the local schools. There are only 5 local schools that probably this area serves, our park. And, you know, ask their thoughts. Because I come off a governor's meeting tonight, and I know the children from Astramannock Primary School are right into the Welsh Assembly because of the loss of the green space. So we haven't consulted. So can somebody tell me why we haven't consulted? I just want an answer, officer, why we haven't consulted with the wider community, which our constitution states.
All right.
Thank you very much for that. Minute.
Would Andrea West like to come in on that one?
Yes, certainly. As I mentioned in my presentation, the consultation list is actually stipulated and given to us by Welsh Government. We are required to undertake the pupil voice in relation to the proposal of the school it affects. And as we demonstrated in a previous scrutiny committee, we actually showed you the video of the children being party to that consultation process. We're also required to consult with them post-occupancy. So we'll actually go back to the children that we consulted with and ask them for their views moving forward. And as the Vice Chair indicated, the children who were consulted on the proposal within Trinity Fields not only were pleased for themselves in relation to it, but they were actually concerned with the boys in the rugby club. And it was explained to them that the mitigation would be put in place to address those concerns.
Chair, I don't think my question has been answered. Our constitution, something that we are governed by as councillors, hasn't been addressed. I'm asking why, as it states, why haven't we consulted more widely? You had the opportunity to follow our constitution. This is an area, if this actually goes to a judicial review, these are areas, and I don't want to see anything come into the council at cost, but these are areas that we haven't addressed that will be picked up. And to say you consulted with Trinity Fields, and I'm really glad of that, I think that's fantastic. But as our constitution says, you haven't consulted with the wider community. You've left them out, you've ignored them.
Councillor James, we're consulting with the people we're told to consult as part of the school organisation code. The school organisation code is the document that we have to follow when implementing all our proposals.
Okay, that's fine. I've got another question here, please.
Okay.
In the consultation report, again, it states that Astramannock 3, which is where the fields are, is significantly higher than others of value in the area, in the borough. As it was stated, I think, either by Natalie or Scott, actually, it was 17th and it was last parts of the area, right? So it was the 17th lowest. So in the borough, so for physical environment, can we actually amend the report? Because actually it's not significantly higher. Those figures are the lowest. They're 20%, you know, they're less than 20%. So why is that in the report? Can anybody say why whoever wrote the report, why they said it's significantly higher? And the centre of Ystrad is the lowest in the borough. So why is that in the report? Can anybody answer that?
Do we have an officer to answer that, or would Richard Edmonds like to come in on that?
Sorry, Chair. I wasn't sure if I was getting clarity from what Councillor James was asking there. I felt like he was mixing two issues, so I'm just going to ask him again. Just bear with me a sec, Councillor, because there's a little bit of interference. I can hear someone talking in the background. I wasn't sure I picked up what the key issues were. So if you could just run them by me again, I'll do my best to answer.
Right. In the school report, it states that the area of Ystrad, which is Trinity 1, 2 and 3, that park area, is significantly higher than anywhere in the borough, right? But actually, the figures show that the physical environment is 17 to the one part, and the other part is 1. So actually, it's not higher. It is the lowest. It's part of the lowest in the borough. So
sorry,
can
I just ask some clarity? When you say the report says that T1, T2 and T3 is higher, what is it saying it's higher than, or what is it referring to?
What the words are, is that 3 scores significantly higher, this is the area, than any other areas in the borough. I dispute this because this is about physical environment. This is about the physical environment. So you were saying it's a good physical environment. I'm saying it is 17th and last in the area for physical environment. It's not higher than anywhere else in Caerphilly.
So can I clarify, Councillor, are you talking about the pitches at Trinity 1, 2 and 3, or are you talking about the lower super output areas of Ystrad 1, 2 and 3?
Yeah, you are. Ystrad is broken down into 3 distinct output areas identified by WIMD, right?
Yep.
Index, right? Whilst the data for Ystrad 2, which is built up in the town, is scored as low, in relation to physical environment, it should be not considered in this isolation. The remaining 2 areas identified in Ystrad are 1 and Ystrad 3, which includes the area affected by the proposal in addition to Ystrad Penalty Park, score considerably higher when comparing it to other areas in the borough. It doesn't score considerably higher because it's 17 and 1 when you score it.
I think just to be clear from what you're talking me through, if I'm getting this correctly, you are, when you combine Ystrad as a whole, so the areas YM 1, 2 and 3, one of those Ystrad lower super output areas does score very highly on green space. So if you're going to take Ystrad as a whole, then you've got a better score than has been suggested previously. When you break it down into 3 component parts, then each 3 of those component parts score differently on physical environment. I think from memory, 2 and 3 score, as you said, but you've omitted the score for Ystrad 1, which is a much better space and still in Ystrad as a ward.
We're talking about the park where you want to take the areas away.
Yeah, sorry, I think you must be confusing Trinity 1, 2 and 3 with Ystrad 1, 2 and 3. Those are separate issues.
No.
Councillor, can I just ask?
Ystrad 3, which is the park, right?
I'm just concerned, Councillor, that you appear to be relaying messages. I'm not sure I'm getting.
I'm actually, I've got the other iPad on, which is your report.
No, but I can hear someone talking to you, so I just want some clarity in terms.
My wife is giving me the iPad, right?
Right.
And the Welsh Index multiple deprivation has been quoted on several occasions, including cabinet meetings. December the 9th, 2020, indicated that Ystrad is ranked one of the most deprived areas in the authority's green space. That's your cabinet report that is on there. So it is Ystrad Mynach, whether you take it 1, 2 or 3, your cabinet report states that it is one of the worst areas in Caerphilly. And yet you were saying we'll take another field away.
No, I think it's the difference between holding Ystrad Mynach as a whole, where one of the areas I think scores 76 out of it.
Your cabinet stated, I don't want to, you know, you can, I'm just getting my point over. Your cabinet stated that Ystrad Mynach is one of the most deprived areas in Caerphilly for green space. That's 2020, December the 9th, 2020, your cabinet meeting. I'm not making that up. I just picked it up, you know, I got my wife to pick it up on the thing. You go back to it for me. Because I'm talking, I can't do that. I can't go on there on you.
Okay, so just to clarify from my position, there are 3 separate parts to Ystrad Mynach.
No, we're not talking about that. We're saying that Ystrad Mynach, your cabinet state, and then, but you were saying in your report, no matter what area it is, that it scores significantly higher.
So can I just check, Councillor, is the report that you're referring to, does it contain some of the consultation responses? So it's not us saying that, it's someone that's responded to the consultation. I just need a bit more detail. It's
the consultation report.
Yeah, so that includes that includes the views of those that were consulted.
That is officers' response. I won't go on anymore because I think people have heard enough about that. But that is misleading, and the only thing I'm asking for there is for it to be addressed and to be altered, because you have made a statement which is misleading. It might have been a mistake.
I'm not sure I've made that mistake, Councillor James.
I said you as an authority, as somebody doing the consultation.
Right. So just for the record, then there are 3 parts to Ystrad Mynach, and each of those scored differently.
Page 19. Page 19 of the report.
Let me just clarify the position. There are 3 lower super output areas in Ystrad Mynach, and all 3 of those scored differently on the Wales Index of Multiple Deprivation for Physical Environment. So when you combine them all as a whole, there's a different score than if you split them apart. Does that make sense?
Yes, but the report that went to Cabinet was for the total of Ystrad Mynach, not split apart. It was all of Ystrad Mynach, and it came out as one of the worst in Caerphilly.
So what you want me to clarify then is that Ystrad Mynach is not one of the worst in Caerphilly for physical environment and green space.
What I wanted to say, yes, it's not a good area. It is very low in green space. It's one of the lowest in Caerphilly.
Councillor, I think you just said that that's what the Cabinet report said, and you want me to clarify. So I can clarify that it's not one of the worst.
That is what the Cabinet report says. What you said in your document was, right, this is word for word. I'll go back to it. This is your report, word for word. I'd written notes down. The Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation has been quoted on several occasions, including the...
Sorry, Councillor, just a reference again. It's been quoted. So that's by consultees responding to the consultation process. So that's us reporting on what we've been told, not our view. I hope that clarifies the situation.
Okay, well, that's fine if you want to go along. One more, please, Teresa, because I know we spent a long time on that.
Yeah, I think we need to. We've got other speakers on the next item.
Can I come back in then? I'll come back in because
if you're extremely quick, Martin, because we have other speakers waiting.
Yeah, fine. Right, it's about the mitigation, and it's about the use of Soonok. Now, again, this is because I had 2 questions there, but it's about the mitigation. There's nothing being put in there, as the councillor before me said. It's about the use, the size. I worked in the sports centre for 9 years. There's no way you were going to get all those people in there without massive extent. You know it inside out. The other thing is there's no parking facilities. If you want to put a sports hub there, you've got to provide parking. And I think the latest council master plan stated that Ystrad Mynach was very, very short of parking facilities. You don't have any parking there. So if you get teams there, teams from away, young players there, if you get the badminton there, which are there all the time, talk about the mitigation, you got other people that use that centre. I think that's what people should know. That there is no parking facilities. So that'll be at the detriment to our town and our town council, the traders. So
right, can we have a response to the parking issue, and then we will be moving on to Derek Havard.
Chair, would it be okay for me to respond, and
yes,
if possible,
please.
Could I just provide a little bit more information as well on the mitigations, because that's come through quite strongly so far, and I think I might be able to add some value. So as far as parking's concerned, that would be a matter for planning committee, as members will be aware, not for our consideration this evening. In terms of the mitigations that are before members, I just wanted to clarify the position. We are, should the proposal to expand Trinity Fields progress, we will be repurposing one pitch. So the mitigation that is required of us for repurposing that one pitch is to provide an additional pitch somewhere else of equivalent quality within the locality. So the proposal that is the mitigation in its purest sense is the provision of a pitch at Soon-Oak 2. So that's a like for like. What we've done above and beyond that, and it's important that members recognise that we are attempting to go further here than is required, is that we have worked with the club and we have identified a number of additional enhancements to the pitch at Soon-Oak 1. That will include a hard standing barrier provision around it, high ball fencing around it, emergency vehicle access to it, and some significant enhancements to the changing rooms to bring 2 additional changing rooms back into use, also to provide changing facilities for match officials and a medical and first aid room. So above and beyond the provision of the pitch at Soon-Oak 2, we're investing in those additional mitigations to the Soon-Oak 1 pitch. At the Soon-Oak 2 pitch then, because it is the lower pitch of the 2, it is subject to flooding and there are sewage difficulties, which no doubt members will raise later. We are putting in underneath that pitch some pitch drainage as prescribed by an independent pitch specialist. And we will be making sure that the surface of both of those pitch is subject to a significant enhancement programme, an ongoing maintenance programme, so that those pitches can be used more regularly by sides throughout the winter months, taking into consideration the points that have been raised by us with the rugby club who've worked alongside us with this. I recognise that we still, we have a difference in whether the mitigations go far enough, but it's important that members understand that the mitigation for the redevelopment of that one pitch is the replacement of that pitch of equivalent quality somewhere else within the locality. So that is Soon-Oak 2. And above and beyond that then, this again is set out within the documentation before members. Working with the club, we have talked about putting a pitch at Trinity 3, and we've reorientated that pitch to a position that mirrors the old college football pitch, as I understand it. Residents of Ystrad Mynach will know the geography better than I. I'm assuming on the basis that it used to be a college football pitch is usable. There are some suggestions within the report that as part of the ongoing flood works around the Ystrad Mynach Park, that there is potential for us across the organisation to design some attenuation that will help residents in and around the park from avoiding flooding, but more importantly will also make the pitches in the park, Trinity 2 in particular, more usable throughout the course of the year. And I think the club would agree any additional use of Trinity 2 would be great as far as everyone is concerned, because it remains in close proximity to the clubhouse. And it's also, although it's not as big as Trinity 1, it's big enough to host senior games as well as junior games. There's been some references to the attenuation work around Trinity 3. Again, we've been clear and transparent in the report. The designs as it currently stands for an earthwork bund around the bottom of Trinity 3 would help manage the flow of water when we were facing a significant period of inclement weather, would release that water slowly and efficiently down through the park to avoid flooding. And there's also a proposal to daylight the current culvert in the park, which would again release the concerns and issues that have existed previously. So I felt it was important, members. This is all within the objection report and all within the consultation report. But all that is prescribed of the council is to provide a single pitch of equivalent quality within the locality to mitigate the loss of the pitch at Trinity 1. We've proposed that, and if members will afford me the opportunity later, if there are any questions about whether Soon 2 is of equivalent size to Trinity 1, I'm happy to share with members a presentation that shows the relative sizes of Trinity 1, Soon 1 and Soon 2, if that would be helpful. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So if we can have Derek Harvard and then Phil Bevan and then John Roberts, please.
Thank you, Chair. You know, the point that I want to make is this, that we're talking about expanding a school that's unique and very special. And anybody who's been there, as I have, and as many of you have, you know how special that is. And Mrs. Hurst explained quite strongly exactly the value that that school brings to our community. And I think too that we need to look at it and say, well, what are we learning from that? Well, I think what we're learning from it is a professional way of looking after our A&M pupils, and that is invaluable. Now, I understand the mitigation arguments, and I don't think they are satisfactory, to be honest. I don't think they are. I mean, Mr. Lowe says about the rugby club, and I know the rugby club well, and it's one of the best rugby clubs I've been in South Wales, and it's you know, they've got a unique situation there, and the service they provide for young people is really good, and that's got to be considered. I think one of the things that bothers me is that we're talking about pitches and they are next door to the Centre of Sport and Excellence, which we spent a lot of money on, and for some reason they can't reach an accommodation. Now that should be looked into. I'm very unhappy about the fact that they've got a good rugby club, high standard of rugby, and they can't get on that pitch for some reason or other. I don't know why. I don't know why that is, but I think that should be looked into. Now, as far as Ms. Sargent's plea to provide more, not to do away with open spaces, that's a valid argument as well, because that's the trouble with our valleys. They're all height-sided and not a lot of flat places available. So we must make the most of what we got. And I'm very, this is one of the most conflicted areas that I've had while we've been on education. I want to see Trinity expanded. I want to see it given its place in society that it deserves in our education society. But at the same time, I think the mitigation that we've offered isn't satisfactory. We have to consider that. That has to be, that's an important factor. Now, what are we looking at here? If you can't fit this in, if we can't make this work, then we must be looking at an alternative. And I think that we cannot ignore the need of Trinity Fields to expand, and the work that they do is so valuable because it's so valuable. But at the same time, we can't ignore the requirements of the people of Ystrad who are putting up a very good argument. And I mean, I know Martin does go on a bit, I know that, but he's making some valid points there. And I think we should be looking at this again. That's what I think. We should be looking at this decision again. But like I say, I'm really conflicted on it. So that's my contribution for what it's worth, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask, did Jared Locker wanted to come in, but there? You're on silent, Jared.
Apologies, it didn't click quick enough. Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that the councillor made then. Obviously, in relation to the Centre of Excellence point, now, obviously within your packs, page 48 and 49, and I'm sure you are fully averse to what's in there, but there is the criteria, and it's clear in there in terms of the usage that the club have had. So, and I know you've all read it, it's been raised at previous meetings, but it is a detailed layout there of from 2016 right through to 2019, prior to COVID, of the amount of times that the club have had access. It does keep getting raised, but unfortunately, I don't know why, because obviously the figures that are actually in the report are based on our income that we receive from the club. So the figures are there for members. So from Councillor Haver's point of view, the figures are in there. That's the usage that the club have booked, and they do get access, regardless of what anybody else says. They do get access to the facility. There is a criteria, but from a training, all the figures are there for all members, should they want to refresh themselves with it. In your packs, page 48 and 49, and it lists the amount of senior and youth games. I can talk you through from 192 bookings in 16-17, 222 bookings in 17-18, and 153 bookings in 18-19, and they're in your pack. So that is there, and that is what has actually been paid for and what our records show. So I think that is quite clear that usage has taken place. And Mr. Lowe made reference earlier, to be fair, on about the criteria, which is right, and it's well documented. Cabinet endorsed a report in 2014, obviously outlining the criteria that we put in place as a council, and that criteria still exists to date. But as Mr. Lowe alluded to, they have played, he said, about 15 of their games a season for the first team. We're bearing in mind you play 11 home games in a season. So obviously they're playing the majority of their home games on that facility. So hopefully that point there on the Centre of Excellence use and usage, hopefully I've made reference to the pack that should clarify that for members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I ask for Councillor Phil Bevan to come in, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Could I first of all compliment Andrea and her team for a very comprehensive report. It is, I would say, about one of the best reports I've seen. The detail of it is tremendous. In the course of your submission, Andrea, you mentioned the fact a new school on another site was looked at. Was that a replacement for Trinity or an additional school?
Both options were looked at. Both options were looked at, Councillor Bevan, and as outlined in the first report that we did, the preferred option was the expansion of the existing school site.
Can I then go back then, Chair, to look at these satellite things that we've got all over the place? Some of them are not good quality. I know that Glananant is the money being spent on that. Wouldn't it be a better idea to have a new Trinity School Fields, an additional Trinity Fields School type in the valley to cater for all these satellites and bring them all together, and thereby protecting the rugby pitches, and everybody's happy? I would have thought that somebody in the authority is going to go berserk thinking that they're going to spend some more money on something, but the Trinity Fields is such a wonderful facility that it either has to be enhanced or you build a new one to protect the local authority, the local company. Thank you.
Can I bring in Sarah Ellis to respond to that, please?
Certainly can. Sarah?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, thank you for raising that, Councillor Bevan. I think I'd like to reinforce what's already been said by Mrs. Hurst to support the answer to that question, and the information that's already in your pack in terms of the process that's been gone through in terms of identifying the current proposal. What's been very clear in terms of the consultation with the children in Trinity Fields is that, they very much welcome the opportunity to have existing site expanded to meet their needs. In terms of the needs of the children themselves, we're very clear that the group of children that we're talking about find changes in their condition or transition arrangements really difficult. So obviously that's one of the key things that we've been thinking about in terms of the current proposal. We also know that we've got an excellent model of leadership within the current provision and a well-developed hub and spoke model. You talked of satellites. Of course, the plan is to enhance the provision that we have in the local authority, both on Trinity Field site, but also within the satellite provision in line with the hub and spoke. And that fits very nicely with the ALN Act and our requirements to ensure that we are reviewing the provision that we have for children with additional learning needs in the local authority. So hopefully that gives you some idea in terms of the range of considerations that we've had in relation to the current proposal.
Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Phil Bevan?
Only just, I don't think within the report there is no great detail about a second school. I think it's referred to, but it's never been looked at to see whether it's possible, because that would resolve a lot of issues, wouldn't it?
Right. If I can move on to Councillor John Roberts.
Diolch Cadeirydd, thank you Chair. Sôn am teimlo chwythig. I really feel awkward within myself tonight. I really do. Part of what I was going to say and ask has already been voiced, and voiced very well, by Councillor Miles, and I more than agree. Mitigation, yeah, and just before I ask my question, just a little observation maybe on lack of green spaces and lack of leisure spaces. Thinking back of the time when I lived in Ystrad, which isn't really all that long ago, there's been, there used to be allotments at bottom Ystrad. They've all gone. There's housing there. There was another little play area by Ynys Glede Street as well. So they've gone as well. Just to add, we've got to remember they've lost more than the substantial amount we're already saying they've lost. We've had lots of correspondence about Caerdrindod from both sides. We've read and read, well, at least I hope we all have. And whilst looking through them, I noticed that some questions were asked, and at the time that I was reading those questions in correspondence, I didn't see an answer to some of them. So I'm just still wondering tonight whether comment was made on the extension for 80. And a question was asked, when that's reached, what next? And the comparison was made with Cwm Gwyddon, when it said, Cwm Gwyddon, there was preparatories there for even more spaces in future. So just to ask, please, the question that I know has already been asked by other people, for the 80 spaces, and they will fill, when they're full, what next? Has that question been answered? And if so, can we have the answer tonight, please? Because we might have to come back on this. Diolch fawr.
Can I ask Sarah Ellis to respond to that, please?
Certainly. Sarah?
Thank you. So in terms of the predictions, what we're looking at is the current data that we have, previous data that we have, and making predictions as best as we can on the basis of the information that we have available to us. In your objections report, there are some statistics around how the increases have developed over the last 5 or 6 years. We're using obviously that information, as well as information that we have available to us in terms of the additional learning needs of pupils that are already known to us in the local authority, in order to be able to predict usage over the next period, and that's why we have identified 80 places.
Chair, can I come back, please?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I get what you're saying. So my question still stands. When the 80 places are full, what next? Come on now, what next? And I'm not being awkward.
What we have to do is plan on the basis of the information that we have available to us. And I'm sorry that I'm repeating what I'm saying. Currently what we know is that the direction of travel from Welsh Government in terms of ALN is for the majority of children to have their needs met in mainstream. We also know that we're talking about a very specific cohort of our population when we're talking about children who link with our special school. And that's why we've worked hard to develop our hub and spoke model, which allows us to develop provision linked to mainstream schools for our most complex children, which adds to our capacity. So as well as the on-site capacity at Trinity Fields, we've also got capacity within our hub and spoke, and also why we review regularly our capacity for our SRBs across the local authority in line with the ALN Act. So we're confident at this present time that the numbers that we're providing to you are the numbers that will meet the capacity going forward. I can see Ed's got his hand up as well.
Yeah, if I could ask Richard Edmonds to come in there, please, Ed.
Yeah, sorry if I'm going over kind of pseudo old ground on this one, but it's clearly a key issue. Sarah's already referenced the fact that we've got an adopted policy to provide a hub and spoke model, with Trinity Field being the hub, and those spokes made up of satellite classes and SRBs as discussed. Just to give you an indication of our kind of future planning, you'll be receiving a further report later on this evening around Cwm Gwyddon. And as members will appreciate, part of the plans is to provide an SRB on site there. So it's not a case of we build this school and that's the end of it. It's a case that we continue to add opportunities into the mix to meet the wide range of parental needs in terms of the ALN Act. So it's not just a one size fits all model. It's a combination of things that we have at our disposal. And these are things that we have been doing for a little while. What we're missing is the capacity for these most vulnerable children in that central hub. And that's what tonight's proposal is all to do with. Thanks, Chair.
If I could ask Councillor Phil Bevan to come in, please.
Yeah, I certainly listened to what you're saying, but you're saying that there is a potential increase in numbers there. And we have all these satellites about the place. We have all these out of catchment children, which cost a fortune. Surely if we had an all singing, all dancing new school, in addition to Trinity Fields, with all the checks and balances that would be necessary to look after some of these very challenging children, wouldn't that be a better way? I'm not talking about the rugby now, I'm just talking about the provision for all these children in our area who are mentally or physically challenged.
Just if I could come back there, Chair, there are only...
Can I have an answer of Sarah, please, on that? Because she would love to see a new school, I suspect, because all the staff in the satellites would be in the school working, so the staff problem would be.
So just before we bring Sarah in, Councillor Bevan, just in terms of the statement you made around the out of catchment pupils, there are only four children from out of Caerphilly that are served by Trinity Fields. So Trinity Fields is very, very much a Caerphilly asset serving Caerphilly children.
Tell me the cost, Ed. What's the cost, annual cost on those 4 children? Would that pay for a new school, wouldn't it?
Sarah, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, certainly. Just in terms of the staff that work across satellites, just to reinforce the message that, you know, our whole vision is around developing a hub and spoke model across the local authority, which enables children and young people to have their needs met effectively, albeit at the central site or within the satellite sites that we have across primary and secondary schools. And that is absolutely the direction of travel in the vision of the local authority. Just in terms of the costings, you know, it's important to reflect that there are circumstances where children are directed to Trinity Fields via tribunal, and that situation is beyond our control. So, you know, as Ed said, the purpose is to ensure that primarily we meet the needs of the children within the borough, but there are occasions, and in this particular instance, I think we're right in saying there's 4 children in Trinity Fields who come from elsewhere across the local authorities locally, where we are able to meet their needs effectively. That's not usual, that's exceptional.
Thank you. And if I can ask Councillor Martin James to come in there. If it's one quick question, Martin, I'd appreciate that. You're on silent.
Yeah, I'm there now, Chair. Sorry about that. What I'd like to say, they're talking about it's about what Phil have said, really. They're talking about the satellite and about the hub and spoke, and we talk about engagement and consultation. How many of the parents of the children that are in these satellite environments, how many of those are consulted? That this is the best place for them, because I can tell you from experience, they are put in those places because there's no room in Trinity. Now, that's all I'm going to say. Do we consult with the parents? Because half the time there's there's no room in Trinity. You've said it. So these children are placed there.
Right. Can I ask Sarah Ellis to come in there, please?
Yeah, sure. Just to reinforce that we consult with parents all the time about meeting the needs of children, where they have identified additional learning needs, and having the children's voice and the family's voice at the centre of the process is absolutely essential. And you'll know from looking at the new ALN and Tribunal Act and the new code that person-centred practice is absolutely the premise of everything that happens around children with additional learning needs. No child has any sort of assessment of their need or any placement is agreed without engaging the parents and having their consent.
Thank you, Sarah. I think what we'll do now is we'll actually go to page 20 where the recommendations are in your packs, please.
Chair, before you go to the vote, can I just remind members that only members of the Scrutiny Committee should be voting on this, because sometimes we do have a bit of confusion, and I'm conscious that there's a lot of councillors who are present. If I could just remind the committee that it's only the members of the Scrutiny Committee and obviously the three statutory parent governors who have voting rights on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So A is to endorse the recommendation made within the objection report prior to consideration by Cabinet on the 7th of February 2021. B is to endorse the proposed mitigations and the proposal to fund the estimated cost of 300,000 from the 2021 miscellaneous finance revenue contribution to capital outlay. That's RCCO budget. Right.
Chair, I have a proposal to put forward, please.
Right.
I have an addendum to put forward.
Okay, can I ask what your addendum is, please? The wording?
Yes. Given that there's no costings for a new school, should we now review our decision to not investigate the full cost for option 5? So what I'm asking for, costings for a new school, and shouldn't we go back to look at the cost, because none of us have got it, given that also they haven't satisfied the mitigation yet. So I'm just asking for it to go back, to delay the decision and go back and look at costings for option 5, which is a new school, which many members have suggested would be good.
All right. Councillor Farina Childs wants to come in here. Andrew?
Yeah, I was just going to say I'd be quite happy to second Martin's proposition.
Okie doke. So we will need to have a different kind of voting on this then. Mark, so if we can take a roll call really on Martin's proposal.
I think, Chair, it would be an amendment when the substantial motion is as before you, and this would be an amendment if you accept it.
That's correct, Phil. Yeah.
Okay, but we need to vote on the amendment.
Yes, that's correct, Chair. So as there's an amendment, we'd have to vote on that first of all to just to gauge the committee's reaction to what has just been proposed by Councillor James and seconded by Councillor Farina Childs. So I think I'm right in saying that Councillor James, that your motion is that there should be a review because there has been no costings for a new school, and so therefore it should be delayed. The recommendation in this report should be delayed because there is no costings for a new school. Is that what you're saying, Councillor James?
Exactly, that's right, because we've no costings going forward to make sure we're making, it's a very big decision. I think we should sit back and get all the facts in front of us. That's all, because it's a big decision, and I'm sure this will suit all parties at this moment.
Can I say we've got two other hands up? We've got Councillor Brenda Miles and Sue Richards. Could I have Sue Richards first, please?
Can I just clarify the process to members? Members will be aware that previous times we've brought this to scrutiny, that the business case process to Welsh Government has been approved for this expansion. So this isn't an angle for ourselves to work out the costs. What it would mean is that we as an authority would need to put another business case into Welsh Government. So the options appraisal that we've discussed two times at scrutiny already, discuss the option of a new build school. Members will be aware that Trinity Fields School, we've invested significantly in that school over the last 10 years. So this wouldn't be a process of the authority just bringing back cost to scrutiny. We'd be going back and looking at a business case to Welsh Government, which would significantly delay the process, and the options appraisal has already discarded that proposal. So I just want to bring that to members' attention, that this would mean basically another options appraisal and another business case for Welsh Government, if that's what the proposal was agreed. But this has already been discounted as an option.
Can I have Councillor Brenda Miles then before we go forward?
Well, I agree with what Sue has already said. I mean, we've already been through the process of evaluating the relative merits of the 5 options that were put forward to us some time ago. Where we are tonight, as I see it, is we're just looking at whether what the Cabinet is charged with doing is looking conscientiously at the objections that are being made now. And the question, I think, is whether the objections that have come in have been conscientiously considered at this point in time. And that's what's the question that's before us tonight. I don't think we can go back in time now and say that we want to relook at what our preferred solution is to for the Trinity Fields School. The preferred option, and we've considered all 5, the preferred option was to expand the site. So I wouldn't be able to support the amendment.
Thank you there, Councillor Miles. Can I also, we've got several people asking to come in. Can I have Andrea West and then Ed Edmonds, please?
Yes, certainly. Can I also remind members that the decision to proceed with the expansion of Trinity Fields School was also the decision made by a cross-party working group. So a number of years ago, before we even asked for permission to proceed to business case, we set up a cross-party working group which looked at all the options available, and it was a result of the members' decision, a part of that group, that we decided to go down the route of extending Trinity Fields School. So it wasn't as officer's decision. We've asked to put this forward. This is a result of a cross-party working group that took account of all options, and this is a result of where we are now.
Thank you. Ed Edmonds.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And again, it may be covering ground that's already been covered, but I think it's really important in terms of the steps that you're about to take as a committee. As Sue and Andrew have outlined, and Councillor Miles has just put back on the table, the options appraisal forming part of the consultation process has been voted on by this committee. it was recommended by this committee, with nobody voting against it, that we progress to statutory consultation phase, with the preferred option being the one that we were seeking objections on. So I think it's important that members understand that when you last considered this, and option 4 was the proposal that you supported in that vote, it does seem like we'd be going back on our word if we were to reopen that. So I just want members to understand this has already been voted for by you as a collective. You've made your recommendation to Cabinet. The statutory objection period is opened. And on that basis, option 4 is the option that we would expect to progress with. Thanks.
Thank you.
If
you want to come in quickly then, Martin.
Well, what I have to defend is what I've put in, which is for us to look at this. Yes, I know we voted on it, but we have never had all the information to make a proper judgment, right? This is a big decision. We've never had and whatever the cross-party group decided, that has never been brought forward. All we know is that option 4, we don't know on what basis, how it was scored, why it was done. And at that time, you know, all it thought, well, yeah, we'll take that bit of field and we'll forget about the green. Nobody is saying Trinity Fields is not worthy of a new school.
I understand that, Martin. Ed Edmonds and Andrea West want to come in again, and I think then we need to progress.
Yeah, that's fine. Just a reminder again then that this committee has considered option 4, whether Councillor James believes he had all the information or not. He didn't vote against this when we last considered this as a scrutiny committee. So I just wanted that point put on record. That's not what the record shows, Councillor James.
I did vote against it. I did vote against it.
There were 13 votes in favour and 2 abstentions.
I voted against it.
Can I ask Andrea to come in?
Thank you. Also, just to reiterate, Councillor James said we haven't been party to all the facts. I think if you go back to my presentation this evening, you'd be surprised how many of the issues that were actually brought up as part of the objection process were actually clarified within the consultation report. So I'd like to remind members that even though Councillor Martin James is alluding to the fact that they weren't aware of issues prior to this, this is the 3rd report that we've actually put in front of members. And as I've emphasised and clarified tonight, the majority of the responses were clarified within my report.
Okay, last speaker now, Councillor John Roberts, please.
Chair, I don't want to speak. It's just to confirm. There were 2 abstentions. Ed is quite right, but Councillor James did vote no on that occasion. He really did. Thank you. We'll leave it there.
Okay. Right. I think
an apology.
Councillor James, let's move on now, because I do
Chair,
have another report to
Will
do.
the matter be put down, Chair?
If I don't have an apology off the officer, I will go to the monitoring officer. He said I didn't vote for.
Right. Councillor James, what I will say is they can double check all their figures, and if an apology is forthcoming, then so be it. But at the moment, we need to move on. We have your recommendation, and we have it. Is it still seconded by Councillor Farina Childs?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, so we will take a vote on that, although really we have already decided on that. So will we be doing that by roll call, Mark? Do you think that would be fair?
Yes, Chair, we'll do that via roll call.
Okay.
So I'll just read out the motion that was put forward by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Farina Childs, and that was to delay decision for further review as there is no costings for a new school. Now that was what was put forward as a motion. So if I can go through the councillors' names and ask them whether they're for, against, or abstaining on this motion. So Councillor Aldworth.
Against.
Councillor Andrews,
Against.
Councillor Bevan,
For.
Councillor Collis, Councillor Collis, Councillor Farina Childs,
For.
Councillor Gale,
Against.
Councillor Hardacre, Councillor Havard, Councillor Havard,
You muted, Eric.
Apologies, against.
Thank you, Councillor Havard. Councillor James,
You're on silent.
Councillor James. Could you just reiterate your vote, please, Councillor James?
For.
Thank you, Councillor James.
Sorry.
Councillor Miles,
Against.
Councillor Parry,
Against.
Councillor Roberts,
Do we oblige? For.
Councillor Simmons,
Against.
Mr. James,
For.
Tracy Millington,
Against.
and Martin Weston.
For.
So that's 8 against and 6 for, Chair. So that motion falls.
Okie doke. So we'll go on to endorse the recommendation made within the objection report prior to the consideration by Cabinet on the 7th of April 2021. Secondly, to endorse the proposed mitigation and the proposal to fund the estimated cost of £3,000 from the 2021 miscellaneous finance revenue contribution to capital outlay budget. So you will find your voting forms up on your screens. Can I just remind everybody that it's only the co-opted members who are allowed to vote and the scrutiny members.
It needs to be moved and seconded, Chair.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah. Can I have somebody to move the recommendation, please?
Chair, can I just come in? Oh,
certainly.
I was just going to say, this is coming to the vote now. Given all the discussion that we've had tonight and some of the concerns that have been raised, it becomes very difficult then to vote when it just comes down to yes or no, whether you're for or against the report. I mean, what I think I struggle with is I would endorse the report, but only on the condition that the mitigations continue to be worked on with the interested parties to make sure that some of the objections that still remain can be resolved, hopefully. But I know it's not
totally agree.
Yes or no,
Yeah.
then, so I don't know.
I have to say, yeah, Councillor Miles, I totally agree. The situation of the Greenfields and the replacement of the rugby pitch has to be resolved. I would like to see Trinity School expanded, but there are real concerns that got to be considered, and I would encourage more work to go on to that as well. So if we could ask for you know, them to continue to try and make the mitigations work. put it that way. I would be happy. Can I ask Councillor Ross Whiting, he would like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, we hear the comments that have been made, and we want to make this work. We want to work with the club, and we want to continue working with the club as we have been. We want to work with the Green Spaces group. We want to work with everybody to make sure that this proposal will work, and I can commit to that.
Thank you very much, Ross. Councillor Roberts, would you like to come back in?
It's just to say it is regarding the mitigations. Some of us have been here before, but not on such an important and big issue. But some of us have been around this kind of area before. We had a rugby pitch in Senghennydd in the Aber Valley, which was the second pitch. And in those days, look, please, let's do this one properly. And that's where I have a concern. Saying that we're going to do it and actually doing it are two different things. I'm sorry. I'm really concerned about this. And it's to say, yeah, we encourage mitigation, we encourage proper dialogue, and that's it. I don't want to speak against Cadrin Dunn.
You really should be taking the vote, Chair. This is opening a debate.
I'm sorry.
Again, wasn't it?
Well, I have Frian Kite wishing to speak quickly, and then we will take the vote. Like I said, it's going to be a very long evening because there are other speakers waiting to speak on another issue.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to really come in and reiterate really that this will be a fundamental part of the consideration of the planning application, and really that's properly where this matter will have to be addressed. We will have to be satisfied as a local planning authority that the mitigation that is being put forward as part of the planning application is satisfactory, and I'm sure that all of the opponents and the people making these representations will make very strong and forceful representations to the planning application in due course, and it will be a matter that the local planning authority will have to take into account. I just wanted to remind members that there is a due statutory process to follow with regards to that mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Frian. We will go on to the vote, but we need to have somebody to move the recommendation, please.
I'll move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Carol. And
I will second it.
Thank you, Councillor Havard. Okay, if we can go to the vote then, it is before you on your screens. And if you can submit it, please.
Chair, sorry to be awkward, I haven't got it on my screen at all. Help.
I haven't got it on my screen, Chair.
I haven't got it on mine either.
Right, would you like to give your votes individually then to Mark, please?
Thank you, Chair. So on the recommendation in the report, if you could say for, against or abstain, Councillor Aldworth.
I'm for.
Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Bevan.
Against.
Councillor Collis. Councillor Farina Childs.
Against.
Councillor Gale. Councillor Gale.
You're on mute. You're on mute, June. You're on mute. There you go.
Councillor Gale.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. Councillor Havard.
For. It'll be.
Councillor James.
Or against.
Councillor Miles.
For.
Councillor Parry.
For.
Councillor Roberts.
Dwi'n erbyn. Against.
Councillor Simmons.
For.
Mr. James.
Against.
Ms. Millington.
For.
And Mr. Weston.
Against.
That's carried, Chair. 8 for, 6 against.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone there. I understand it was a very contentious issue. So if we could move on, please, to agenda item 8, and that's 21st Century Schools Education Band B programme, and the statutory objection report for Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon. If I could ask Councillor Whiting to introduce this item, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Similarly to the previous report, this is for scrutiny to consider the objections received as part of the statutory notice period for one of our 21st Century Schools Band B Phase 1 proposals, which is to expand Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon. And it's also due for consideration by Cabinet on the 7th of April. So the proposal is to relocate Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon to a new purpose-built Welsh medium provision school to be situated on the vacant site of the former Cwmcan High School, with an anticipated occupation date of September 2023. It's proposed that the new building will incorporate a primary facility with childcare, special resource base, nursery, rising threes, and main school classrooms, main assembly hall, food technology space, a library and IT space. It will also improve the outdoor learning space by including external play areas, a mugger, and access to a grass pitch. The identified site will have sufficient accommodation to facilitate a new building that will provide accommodation for approximately 420 pupils, plus 60 nursery places and 16 SRB places. The proposed project will consider the desire to encourage and facilitate community use of the asset, and the design process will seek to include measures to enable the safe zoning of parts of the new school building, sports facilities, including the hall, and a multifunctional classroom compliant space, which would be adapted for community use. Overall, this project represents an opportunity to meet the Welsh medium demand in the eastern area of the county borough and help the council to achieve its objectives set out in the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan. The proposals went to statutory notice on the 11th of January 2021 and was open for objections until the 7th of February. In total, there were 2 objections. As an objection period, there were no opportunities for responses in support of the proposals, and these objections will need to be balanced alongside the educational benefits of this proposal. The key areas of objection were mainly in relation to the prioritisation of Welsh medium education and a perceived need for an additional secondary school in the area. Responses to each of the objections can be found in the objection report at Appendix 1, which I believe Andrea will walk us through when she makes her presentation. And I also understand that there are speakers tonight, and thank you to them for still being here with us, who wish to address the committee on their views and objections. I look forward to hearing the views of the committee and the speakers on this proposal. This will represent a very significant and much needed improvement of the school's facilities, and officers are here to answer any detailed questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ross. Could I firstly invite Mrs. Jennifer Rogers, who is a parent governor at the Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon, to speak first, please.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me permission to speak at the meeting. I don't want to revisit too much of the information that's already in the report, but I felt it was really important to represent the school community on a personal level as a parent and as a governor. Cwm Gwyddon is an outstanding school, as is evidenced by their recent Estyn report and by the experience that our children have at the school. The number of children who are applying to attend the school is increasing year on year, and so our school community is also growing wider. More than 95% of our pupils are within our catchment, therefore fully representing our local community. Especially in the primary phase of learning, there are so many opportunities for parents and wider families to be included in school events, assemblies, performances, workshops, many of which are simply not possible in Cwmgwyddon's current facilities. School events such as performances or Easter celebrations can only take place in the yard and are therefore weather dependent. This is difficult for working parents who often have to rearrange their commitments at short notice or then become unable to attend. There are also limits, often 2 tickets per child, for example, for performances, meaning that wider families, grandparents, for example, are unable to attend in addition to their parents. Obviously, it's impossible for us to extend this into the wider community as well. The school has very successfully hosted a number of charity events, such as coffee mornings, to which the wider local community are invited. But again, this is only possible when the weather is favourable. We would love to be able to share events such as these with our community, but are currently prohibited from doing so. The Tunpath that was organised by staff last year, off-site due to lack of space, was hugely well received and attended by children, parents and members of the local community. The new building could see these events become a regular part of school and community life, and we would welcome and consider other community activities on the site. We're also fully aware of the negative impact of school traffic on the Abercarn community. This is unavoidable at our current location. This will be avoided at the new site as access to the proposed new building is through the industrial estate. And furthermore, the current location is a danger to our school children and families, with a child being knocked down on the crossing only last term. School are immensely supportive of parents participating in school life, whether or not those parents are Welsh speakers themselves. Many parents do wish to learn or improve their Welsh, and in the past, school has facilitated this by providing space for courses to run. With the increase on roll, this has also become impossible, meaning that some parents do not now have the option of attending a course that might be further away or incompatible with school hours and childcare. Having learnt Welsh as an adult myself and now regularly working through the medium of Welsh, I can see how beneficial this could be to both the children and the parents. Cwmgwyddon has always provided a rounded and rich set of experiences for their learners, and even more so since these ideals have been formalised in the new curriculum, which Cwmgwyddon have successfully followed for the last 5 years as a pilot school. Here, again, we're unable to share the student achievements and experiences with companies such as Welsh National Opera and Opera Boots with the immediate school community, never mind the wider school community and the local community, due to lack of space and lack of facilities. There is no question that there are many schools and organisations that would welcome and benefit from an investment and opportunity such as this. But there is also no question that Cwmgwyddon is an outstanding school with a demand consistently exceeding its current limitations and is in need and deserving of this investment in the already excellent education that they provide for our children. Thank you very much for your time. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch yn fawr, Mrs Rogers. Secondly, we have Councillor Andrew Whitcomb who wishes to speak.
Good evening. A very interesting meeting, Chair. Right, let me get my screen up. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Chair and members of the Education Scrutiny Committee for allowing me to speak to you tonight. As you're aware, the consultation document for the above school site is now finalised and referred to scrutiny prior to being submitted to Cabinet for final approval. Myself and Councillor Priest, the other local council in the area, feel you need to be advised that there is considerable opposition to moving the Welsh primary school to the site of Cwmcarn School, not because of opposition to Welsh language education, but because of the condition of the other 2 English medium primary schools in the Abercarn ward. As ward members, myself and Councillor Priest have consulting constituents, and there's a range of options. There's a history there in the site, and wish to clearly state our position on what we should consider should happen to that site. Firstly, the continued use of that site for educational provisions is a paramount priority. The site has a history and legacy that needs to preserve for the future generations of learners and scholars across both methods of education. Therefore, we are both supportive of the development of that site for the stated purposes of educational provision. In the last couple of years, a petition has been submitted to the local authority from residents of Cwmcarn by the Residents
associations opposing the preferred option of placing a new Welsh medium education facility on the site of Cwmcarn High School. And an open meeting, public meeting, took place by myself, Councillor Priest, the then Cabinet, and members of the local community. All have reasons for wanting the site to be preserved for educational provision, and they have valid reasons. Abercarn Ward has 3 primary schools, 1 Welsh medium and 2 English medium schools. The accommodation in all 3 schools is wanting. 2 are in Victorian buildings and the 3rd is in a 1960s construction and is in a confined space. None of these schools has room to grow and expand, and that's important. Cwmcarn School has that space. And I example how much space that is. In areas, in metres square, I'll run through them. Ysgol Congreiddan has 3,300 metres squares. Abercarn Primary School consists of 11,300 metres squares. Cwmcarn Primary School has 5,200 metres square. The site at Cwmcarn High School has 65,300 square metres of space. That's 16 acres. The other 3 schools together come up to 5. We therefore feel that should there be a consideration which would benefit all, and that is building 2 schools on that site. The creation of 2 schools would provide an expansion of educational provision, offering parents and children a choice of educational routeways, either Welsh medium education or English medium education in modern facilities. The current preferred option would marginalise children in the current dilapidated English medium school. We realise, however, that cost and funding are considered the authority and Welsh Government would have to bring to bear. However, there are tangible assets in the local authority's gift to consider to help fund a 2-school option. Building 2 separate schools with interlinked facilities would release 3 asset sites within the ward, helping offset the cost of our proposed 2-school solution. There is safe access via pedestrian subway to the school site, Cwmcarn High School, and all three schools suffer parking congestion, and a 2-school option on this site would solve that problem. Cwmcarn School has that capacity. We therefore wish to submit a proposed option for a 2-school solution. Councillor Priest and I have spoken to a number of people, and this seems to be the solution that would suit everybody. We believe that the dual education offer would suit all local constituents and serve the educational needs of the local community and beyond. I therefore ask you, the committee, when you're considering your recommendation and the approval of the preferred option, that you codicil your recommendation and ask Cabinet to consider the possibility of a 2nd English medium school on that site. So we'd have 2 new schools rather than 1. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I do have to leave the meeting because, believe it or not, I'm half hour late for another one. But thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me to speak tonight, and I look forward to watching the debate on the recording later.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Whitcomb. We're also joined by a Cwmcarn resident, Rosemary Instone. Thank you again for your patience this evening. So
it's okay, I'm still here.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Chair for allowing me to speak, and obviously my name is Rosemary Instone and I'm a Cwmcarn resident, been in Cwmcarn for nearly 40 years. The proposed site was left to the Cwmcarn for the purpose of education. Admittedly, this can be for English or Welsh speaking children. However, the majority of local children speak English, with a scattering of Welsh included in their curriculum. The majority of feeder schools are inadequate and need updating, as Councillor Andrew Whitcomb has already said. The residents feel that the area badly needs a new English school, ideally from the age of 3 to 16, even to 18, because they feel that some pupils prefer to do their A-levels in a school setting rather than a college setting. But the site is large enough for both the proposed Welsh and an English medium school, perhaps with shared facilities, e.g. as example, sports and the performing arts building that's already cited down there. A couple of the residents are asking if the agreement has already been made to sell off some of this land while still following the rule of education on the site to cover the covenant that was on the land. From the 21st Century School Objection Report and the proposals that have been prioritised on a number of factors, including building condition and overall suitability, Ysgol Cymraeg Cwm Gwyddyn ranks lowest, with overall suitability at a C, while Cwm Carn Primary is an A. Why that is, I don't know. I just wonder whether all the committees has visited the school at Cwm Carn. The school's got no playing field. The school can use the playing field at Feeder Row, but the children have to access this via a steep incline, via a path which is uneven underfoot. A handrail is in situ, but it's not fit for purpose. Once they get to the bottom, they then have to negotiate steps at the bottom, which are uneven. Even I don't like going down that way. The infant school yard is on an incline and it also has a camber. And part of the yard is used for teachers' cars. This in itself is a dangerous hazard. Brakes can fail with no warning, and also faulty electrics can cause a car to burst into flames, and there are children playing near. The junior school does have a level yard, but is very narrow, which follows the outline of the school. The nursery section had part of their play area reduced when a classroom for the infant school was built. The area is now cramped, not allowing children to run around and play without restriction. There is also nowhere in the area where the school can be extended. Like with Cwm Gwyddyn, when the school puts on a concert, etc., there is only 2 tickets allowed per family. So consequently, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers or sisters are not able to go and watch. From around the area where I live, there are very few children who go to the Welsh school. With the new school, children will be brought from outside our immediate area by bus. And the residents don't feel that the school will be part of the community. And they felt, one lady mentioned, the school would be elitist. And they wanted to know whether the Welsh school, could be built elsewhere. The residents of Cwm Carn feel they are being sidelined because they don't speak Welsh. At the start, a petition was handed in, as Councillor Whitcomb said, voicing our opinions. The residents of Cwm Carn feel their children deserve to be educated in a school fit for purpose, giving the children every opportunity to achieve their full potential, which they don't have in this school because they don't have the outside space.
5 minutes, Chair.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to put forward the feelings of myself and that of the majority of Cwm Carn village residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Instone. Right, before we hear from any officers or the officers' report, does anyone have any need for any further clarification from Mrs Rogers? Councillor Whitcomb has already left, so or Miss Instone, please. Derek Harvard has got his hand up.
Chair, I'm wondering if you need a proposal to abandon standing orders, because could you have some advice on the clerk?
Yeah,
Yes, thank you, Councillor Havard. I was going to suggest that obviously because the meeting is now going longer than anticipated, we would need a motion to suspend standing orders, and that would allow us to go on until a maximum of 9 o'clock, but it would allow the meeting to go beyond 8:15.
Well, I propose that, Chair. I propose suspension standing.
It's Liz Aldridge seconding that.
Thank you. So now if I could ask the clerk to put forward a form. Have we got a poll for that? Or I could do it by roll call, Chair, whichever you prefer.
Yes, a roll call would be fine.
Okay, so this is just to suspend. Oh, hang on. I think something's come up on the screen now, so I think we can do it via forms, Chair.
Wonderful.
Chair, we've got 2 members with their hands about to ask questions. Sorry.
Yeah, later on.
We can ask the questions as soon as we've extended the meeting, Councillor Roberts.
Apologies, Chair, Madrugini.
That's been carried, Chair. There's no abstentions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. If I could ask Councillor Phil Bevan then.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mrs. Instone, where did she get the statement that Welsh medium education is an elite form of education? What does that mean?
This is what a resident said to me. She feels that Welsh education is becoming elite. It will be while it's down there, and that all the provisions are being put forward for Welsh school rather than English.
Well, I think you're totally wrong there, but I'm surprised that if you feel the same way that it's an elite form of education and you don't want your children into an elite form of education. Is that what you're saying? You're on mute. Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I haven't got children. They would like their children in an elite school, but they feel that all the money is being spent on the Welsh education is being pushed rather than English.
Okay, can I ask?
Well, can I say that it is a policy of the Senedd that Welsh medium education is expanded. We're trying to get a bilingual nation. I can't speak the language myself, but I'm not against it. But it seems strange to me that you don't want your children into an elite form of education if it's provided for you.
They don't want their children educated in the Welsh medium. They want English medium, and they want a state-of-the-art school for their Welsh, for their children. Whereas the Welsh seem to be getting it all the time. This comes from the Senedd, because they are pushing.
Move progress, Chair.
Yes, certainly.
Come back on that. There are 11 Welsh medium primary schools in the county and 1 Welsh medium comprehensive. And I think there's about 130 odd, 100 and some odd English medium primaries. So I can't see why you think that Welsh medium education is being given any advantage over English medium, because it isn't. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Can I move on now and ask for Councillor Derek Havard, please?
No, I put my hand down, Chair.
It's still up, Derek.
I have knocked it off. I don't know.
It is now. Lovely.
Down now?
Yes, it's down now. Thank you. Can I ask, did Martin James want to speak?
No, sorry, Chair. My hand just went. No, I was just listening.
Okay, no problem then. If there's no more hands raised or no more questions, could I hand over to Andrea West for the report, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Chair. Can I ask Lisa to bring the report up on screen, please? Okay, so the objection report that we're giving consideration to at present is in relation to the proposal to replace the current Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon onto the former Cwm Carn High site. Next slide, please. So we're proposing to relocate Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon onto a new purpose-built Welsh medium provision school to be situated on the vacant site of the former Cwm Carn High School, with an occupation date from September 2023. As part of the proposal, we're proposing to incorporate a primary facility with childcare, a special resource base, nursery, rising threes, a main classrooms, main assembly hall, food technology space, library and IT space. I think it's important to emphasise here as well that this asset will also be available for the community usage, and the school is being designed as such that we'll be able to zone off elements of the building in order to allow for that facility to be compliant, so we can actually use it not just outside school hours but during school hours should it be required. Next slide, please. Again, as with the last proposal, I'm not going to go through it word by word because it's exactly the same as what members have actually seen already this evening. But just to sort of reiterate here, in relation to the last proposal, it was under section 44 of the Act. This one is in relation to section 42 because it's a regulated alteration to a mainstream school. Again, it follows the same principles and factors, etc., and it will be part of a separate process in relation to planning. The decision-making process, exactly the same as where we were at earlier. It's at point 11 in relation to this, and we are proposing, along with the other one we've just discussed, to take these to Cabinet for final approval on the 7th of April. Next slide, Lisa, please. Again, I'd like to run through the process and remind members as to where we were through the last sort of stages. Again, exactly the same as the last proposal. The 14th of September is when we actually published the consultation document. It ran for the same period of time from the 14th of September to the 26th of October 2020. On the 22nd of September, yourselves as members actually agreed, and there were 13 members in favour of the decision. Again, nobody against and nobody abstained. On the 19th of November 2020, we then actually published the consultation report. On the 26th of November 2020, again, we brought it back to members to endorse the recommendation to proceed to statutory notice. Exactly the same as the last time. We actually had 13 members in favour, none against, no members actually abstained. I think it's important to sort of emphasise here there were 15 members in attendance at the very beginning. However, 2 members had actually left prior to the voting taking place. It went back to Cabinet then on the 9th of December, and it was a unanimous decision that we actually proceeded to statutory notice. The statutory notice ran between the 11th of January 2021 and the 7th of February 2021. We then published an objection report, and it was published in the public domain on the 16th of March, and it's been brought to you as Cabinet members again this evening for approval. Next slide, please. Okay, just to reiterate what I've already said this evening, the publication of the statutory notice commenced on the 11th of February and it concluded on the 11th of January, and it concluded on the 7th of February. Again, anybody that wished to object in relation to the proposal were able to do so in writing or via email. Again, it's important to emphasise here that we follow a procedure outlaid by Welsh Government, and as such it didn't give anybody the opportunity to actually give support in relation to this proposal. And I think it's quite important to actually emphasise that. Next slide, please. Under Section 49 of the 2013 Act, when objections have been received, the proposer must publish a summary of the objections and the proposer's response to each of these objections. This has been given to you as members and is contained within the pack which we've outlined below. Next slide, please. Okay, I think it's important to emphasise here that we only actually received 2 objections. During the consultation period, we actually received 388. 367 of those were positive, 13 were negative, and 8 of them were neutral or no response. I think it's really important to clarify here that both speakers tonight have actually alluded to the fact that there was a petition given. Can I just reassure members that that petition was outside the consultation period, and the number that they had indicated obviously didn't reflect. So the people who had perhaps concerns prior to any documentation being published, I can only assume based on the fact that we'd already received 2 objections that any concerns they have were alleviated and they weren't carried forward. We weren't able to actually give that petition because it was received a number of years ago and it was outside this process. Again, Council summary and full responses to the summaries can be actually contained within the objection report. Next slide, please. There were 2 objections received, as I've mentioned. They covered off 2 areas. The first one was prioritisation in relation to Welsh medium education. As in the previous presentation this evening, any text in green actually denotes where that level of objection was received as part of the consultation process. So as you can see, all the areas that are covered off in the 2 objections had been covered off previously as part of our prior report and had actually been discussed at length in previous scrutiny and cabinet meetings. I think it's important here to actually sort of give members a bit of information as well in relation to investment in local English medium provision. Speakers have actually alluded to the fact tonight that there isn't any investment in relation to English medium schools. However, I can evidence that we've actually, over the last 10 years, in relation to 3 primary schools, which are Abercarn, Cwm Carn and Waun Fawr, and the 2 secondary schools, which are Newbridge and Risca, over the last 10 years, as an authority, we've actually invested circa £6.2 million into these individual schools. So when you give consideration to the fact that we've been told that we're not investing into this going forward, I think that would contradict the opinions that have been expressed as a concern as part of this process. Next slide, please. And again, the other one was a need for a secondary school in the area. They had been clarified as part of the previous report, and I'd like to emphasise here there isn't a demand for secondary provision within the area. Newbridge and Risca have adequate provision to accommodate all the children within their catchment area. In fact, they actually have a very high percentage of children who live outside catchment attending the school. So there isn't any evidence to show that there is a demand for further English medium secondary provision on this site. Next slide, please. So the next step, as members tonight, we're asking you to endorse the recommendations made within the objection report prior to consideration by Cabinet on the 7th of April. And I think the next statement should have been removed. Unfortunately, that's been copied over in relation to the previous one. So I'd ask members to ignore that recommendation. And then on the 7th of April, Cabinet members are asked to make the final determination in respect of Cwm Gwyddon, Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon, not Trinity Fields, as is actually indicated on here. So I do apologise. Obviously, there's an area here we've copied and pasted across. But I can assure members that this proposal is in relation to Ysgol Gymraeg Cwm Gwyddon as opposed to Trinity Fields. And that ends my presentation this evening.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Do we have any questions for Andrea West, please? G. James is asking to speak. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's in regards to provisions for the English schools and the Welsh school. As I understand, the Welsh school will only be on part of the Old Cwmcarn site. How much of that area would still be available in future if needed to expand on the English schools?
We don't, at the moment, there's no evidence to actually indicate that we need to expand any of the English medium schools. You may recall in one of our previous meetings, where clarification was sought with regards to capacity, and I can confirm there is adequate capacity within the English medium schools. In fact, there are surplus places in all of them. So we're satisfied, looking at the projections moving forward, that there's adequate provision within the English medium schools, both primary and secondary, to accommodate demand. With regards to the area on the Cwmcarn High site, that may be something that we would need due to the fact that Welsh medium education is growing. Obviously, that may be something we'd need to consider in relation to Welsh medium secondary provision moving forward.
Thank you very much for that, Andrea.
Thank you. If there are no further questions for Andrea, can I ask you to go to the recommendations that are on page 132, and you're asked to endorse the recommendations made within the objection report prior to consideration by the Cabinet on the 7th of April 2021. Could I have somebody to move the recommendation, please?
I'll move the recommendation, Teresa, as Councillor Liz Aldworth.
Thank you very much.
It's Brenda Miles, I'll second it.
Thank you very much. And if members can go to the vote now, the vote will be coming up. Is that carried? I believe it is.
Yes, Chair, that's carried.
Thank you. Could I then now hand over to Councillor Whiting to introduce the next report, which is item 9.
Thank you, Chair. I'm nearly there. So this report is to inform members of the projected 2021 outturn position for the Director of Education and Lifelong Learning, based on the most recent information that is available, and to propose the use of reserves for specific purposes detailed within the report. So the report identifies projected under and overspends currently forecast for 2021, and the full details of that are attached in Appendix 1. Together with an update with regards to any issues relating to the progress of the 2021 savings targets. In addition, this report gives an outline of the financial issues linked to COVID-19. In summary, the current projected outturn position for the education and lifelong learning is a underspend of 1.288 million. The projected outturn position for corporate services is an underspend of 1.082 million. Consequently, overall, the projected outturn position for the education and corporate services is an underspend of 2.37 million. The report also includes proposals for the use of reserves in specific areas, and the Scrutiny Committee is asked to consider these prior to the proposals being presented to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whiting. Can I ask, is there any questions? Councillor Brenda Miles, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we've got money there, haven't we? That it's kind of a bit of a windfall, isn't it, because of the disruption that we've had in the last 12 months. So it's good to see that some proposals are coming forward to allocate some of that unexpected money to projects, and I'm sure both projects are very worthwhile. But can you tell me how they were chosen? Why these two projects? because I'm sure there must be many others out there that we could have prioritised.
I'll come in. So yes, Councillor Miles. I mean that there's obviously a number of projects that we're looking at within the directorate. I guess the two projects which we've identified within this report, I guess, is where we've got a particular sort of pressing need. One of the projects links to a second satellite class at Trinity Fields. We've obviously been discussing actually that in the first report this evening, whereby obviously, you know, Trinity Fields does have a number of satellite classes in different locations, in different schools across the borough. We've already got one satellite class for Trinity Fields on the St Kenneth site, and this would allow us an opportunity to do adaptations to allow for a second class to be situated on that site. And as we've already discussed in the first report, there's obviously, you know, a demand and a need for sort of, you know, supporting these young people. So that's obviously a priority for the directorate, supporting some of our most vulnerable pupils. And then extending on then, the other part of the proposal links to a building that we've acquired in the Caerphilly Basin, Virginia Park. And this building will give us an opportunity to provide a youth hub for the Caerphilly Basin, and also to support our AOTUS provision. There are pressures with regards to Glan and Nance, the pupil referral unit, and this will give us an opportunity to expand our AOTUS provision as part of our AOTUS strategy, which members will recall that was taken to scrutiny a little while ago. So both proposals, I guess, on the report tonight are very much supporting our most vulnerable learners within the borough.
Thank you, Jane. Are there any other questions?
Can I just say thanks for that? That does make perfect sense, actually, now you've explained it, that because I know AOTUS in particular has been an area of overspend in previous years. So hopefully this extra provision will bring down costs in the long run then.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah's on the call and Sarah will step in, but I guess from a financial perspective, obviously, you know, we've got in-house provision and we've got external provision, and part of our strategy is that we have more in-house provision to support our pupils. So, you know, there's quality, there's cost, you know, things that will issues that we'll need to look at, but this would support us providing more provision in-house.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Brenda. Okay, if there are no further questions, can we go to the recommendation on page 132? And could I have somebody to move the recommendation, please?
I'll move.
I move.
A seconder. Lovely. Right. Voting forms will be up on the screen in a moment. And if you can cast your vote, please.
That's carried, Chair, unanimous.
Thank you very much. Well, this brings and closes the meeting for this evening. I want to thank all the members, the officers and the guests for your utmost patience this evening for a very long session. So I wish you a very good night. Nos da and diolch yn fawr.
Thanks, members. Thanks, Chair. Have a good evening.
All the best, Martin. All the best, Martin.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye all.
Thanks, everybody.